My name is Samantha Wyatt, 26 years old, and my family life nearly fell apart when I finally stood up for myself after years of financial exploitation. After promising to always be there for my family, my cousin Jake did something that crossed every line, and they all sided with him instead of me. My father thought I would accept it quietly like always, but this time he went too far. The consequences went far beyond what anyone could imagine. Before continuing my story, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Leave a like and subscribe for more family secrets nobody tells. I always believed that being available was proof of love. In my family, I was known as the quiet one, the reliable one, the peacemaker. Growing up in a modest neighborhood in Ohio, I learned early that stability was everything. My parents worked hard but struggled with bills, and by 16, I was already working part-time to help out. By the time I turned 21, I had become the unofficial financial safety net for our entire extended family. It wasn't something I planned. It started small, covering my younger brother's textbooks one semester, lending my aunt money for car repairs, helping my parents catch up on their mortgage when Dad got laid off. Before I knew it, I was paying for everyone's emergencies. I had a good job as an accountant at a local firm, and I lived simply in a small apartment to save money. What I didn't realize was that I was saving money just to give it away. "Sam, I need to borrow $300 for Ryan's soccer fees," my sister Bethany would text. Or, "Sam, can you cover Mom's prescription this month? I'm tight on cash." Or, "Sam, the internet bill is due and Dad forgot again." Every time I said yes. Every single time. I never complained. I just transferred the money, paid the bill, covered the cost. My bank account was an open resource for everyone else's problems. My cousin Jake was the worst offender. He lived 2 towns over with his wife and toddler in a house way beyond their means. He worked sporadically as a contractor but spent money like water. Designer clothes, a new truck, expensive toys for his kid. Then he'd call me in a panic about his mortgage payment. "It's just until my next job comes through," he'd say. "I promise I'll pay you back." He never did. None of them ever did. Last year alone, I spent over $15,000 helping my family with emergencies. I kept a spreadsheet, not to hold it over their heads, but to keep track of my own finances. $15,000 of my salary went to other people's bills, other people's lives. What did I get in return? Nothing tangible. Just the satisfaction of knowing I was helping, of being the good daughter, the good sister, the good cousin. I told myself it was enough. My parents never acknowledged what I did. They accepted my help as if it was expected, as if it was my duty. My mother would sometimes say, "You're so good with money, Sam," as if my financial stability was just luck rather than careful planning and sacrifice. My sister Bethany would occasionally thank me with a coffee or a small gift, but she also treated my bank account as an extension of her own. "You don't have kids or a mortgage," she'd say. "You can afford to help out." Could I? I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment with secondhand furniture. I drove a 10-year-old car. I hadn't taken a vacation in 3 years. Every raise I got at work disappeared into someone else's pocket before I could enjoy it. But I stayed quiet. I helped. I enabled. I believed that's what family did for each other. Until last December, when everything changed. It was 2 weeks before Christmas, and I was at my parents' house helping my mother decorate. We were hanging ornaments on the tree, many of which I had bought over the years, when Jake and his wife Ashley showed up unannounced. "Hey, Aunt Linda. Hey, Sam," Jake called out, swinging his toddler Lily onto his shoulders. He was wearing a brand new leather jacket that probably cost more than my monthly rent. My mother beamed at him. "Jake, what a nice surprise. Are you staying for dinner?" "If you're offering," he grinned. "Ashley has book club tonight, so it's just me and the munchkin." I said nothing, just continued hanging ornaments. The last time I'd seen Jake was when he called me frantically about his car payment being overdue. I'd transferred him $450 on the spot. He hadn't mentioned it since. Dinner was tense, at least for me. Jake dominated the conversation, talking about the new contract he was bidding on. how business was booming, all while wearing the expensive jacket I'd indirectly paid for when I covered his car payment instead of him selling his luxuries. When my mother brought out dessert, Jake turned to me. "So, Sam, what's new with you? Still at the same boring job?" "It pays the bills," I said quietly. "Mine and everyone else's," I added under my breath. "What was that?" Jake asked, his eyes narrowing. "Nothing," I replied. But inside, something was shifting. A lifetime of silent resentment was beginning to crack through the surface. Later that evening, as Jake was preparing to leave, he pulled me aside in the hallway. "Hey, I've been meaning to ask you," he started, lowering his voice. "Ashley and I are a little short this month. Christmas shopping for Lily, you know how it is. Could you float us $1,000, just until the new year?" $1,000. After everything he'd already borrowed and never repaid. After showing up in his new leather jacket, talking about business booming. "I don't have it, Jake," I said simply. His expression changed instantly. The charming smile disappeared, replaced by something harder. "Come on, Sam. We both know you do. You always do." "Not this time." "What's your problem?" "It's Christmas. It's for Lily." "My problem is that you never pay me back. Any of you. Ever." He looked at me like I'd grown a second head. "Seriously? You're going to be petty about money? With family?" "It's not petty when it's thousands of dollars, Jake." He scoffed. "I didn't realize you were keeping score." "I'm not keeping score. I'm just saying no for once." Jake's face flushed red. "Wow. So you're just going to leave us hanging for Christmas? That's cold, Sam. Really cold." Before I could respond, he stormed back into the living room where my parents were playing with Lily. I followed, sensing the coming storm but unable to stop it. "You won't believe this," Jake announced loudly. "Sam just refused to help us out with Christmas for Lily. After everything we've been through as a family." My mother's face fell. "Samantha? Is that true?" I felt cornered, ambushed. "Mom, Jake has borrowed thousands from me and never paid back a cent. I'm just saying I can't do it this time." My father, who had been quiet all evening, finally spoke up. "Samantha, that's not how we raised you. Family helps family. I have helped. Over and over. I've paid bills, covered mortgages, bought groceries. For all of you. When does it stop?" The room went silent. My words hung in the air, heavy and unprecedented. I had never spoken like this before. "I can't believe you're counting dollars when your niece needs a Christmas," Jake said, shaking his head in exaggerated disappointment. "Your niece needs a father who manages his money better," I shot back. Jake's face contorted with anger. "You know what? I don't need your charity. Keep your precious money." "Fine," I said, feeling something like relief wash over me. "I will." That should have been the end of it. But Jake wasn't finished. He turned to my parents, playing the victim masterfully. "Aunt Linda, Uncle Robert, I'm sorry you had to see this ugly side of Sam. I didn't realize she resented helping her family so much." My mother looked at me with disappointment that cut deeper than any knife. "Samantha, apologize to your cousin." I stared at her in disbelief. For what? For finally saying no after years of being taken advantage of? For being selfish, my father said firmly. For putting money above family. I looked around the room, at Jake's smug face, at my parents' disappointment, at little Lily who was thankfully too young to understand what was happening. Something inside me broke. "I won't apologize for setting a boundary," I said quietly. My father's face hardened. "Then I think it's best if you leave." I felt like I'd been slapped. "Dad." "No, Samantha. This isn't how we treat family. Until you can apologize to Jake and remember what's really important, maybe you should stay away for a while." "Stay away? It's Christmas in 2 weeks." My mother wouldn't meet my eyes as she said, "You're banned from Christmas until you apologize." I won't have this tension ruining the holiday for everyone else. Banned from Christmas. For refusing to give more money to Jake, who already owed me thousands. For finally setting a boundary after years of being the family ATM. I grabbed my coat and purse, hands shaking. "Fine. I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Fine. As I walked to my car in the freezing December air, tears burning my eyes, I realized something fundamental had shifted. I wasn't just the quiet daughter anymore. I was the outsider, the one who didn't belong, all because I'd finally said no. I drove home in a fog of hurt and anger, barely seeing the road through my tears. When I reached my apartment, I sat in my car for nearly an hour, trying to process what had happened. My own parents had chosen Jake over me. They had banned me from Christmas, a holiday I'd helped fund for years, buying gifts I couldn't afford, contributing to meals, even paying for decorations when money was tight. And in that moment, sitting in my cold car, something crystallized within me. I wasn't really part of the family. I was their bank, their safety net, their financial plan. That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced my small apartment, replaying the evening's events over and over. Around 3 a.m., I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. I pulled up my spreadsheet of loans to family members. I added every text message request, every panicked phone call, every transfer I'd made. By morning, I had a complete record of 3 years of financial drainage. $34,267. That was the total. $34,000 that I would never see again. And I knew exactly what I needed to do. For the next week, I didn't answer calls or texts from my family. There were plenty, my mother asking if I'd calmed down, my sister wondering why I wasn't responding, even Jake sending a half-hearted apology that ended with another request for money. Instead, I went into research mode. I pulled every bank statement, every Venmo transfer, every Cash App receipt. I documented every bill I'd paid on someone else's behalf. I collected screenshots of text messages where promises to repay were made and broken. I created a binder, actual physical evidence of years of one-sided financial support. Each family member had their own section, with total amounts, dates, and what the money was supposedly for. My father's section was the thinnest. He rarely asked directly, preferring to have my mother do it. My sister Bethany's section was substantial. College textbooks for my nephew, bail money when her ex got into trouble, countless emergencies that were really just poor planning. Jake's section was the thickest by far. Car payments, mortgage help, money for his daughter, money for house repairs, money for business supplies, thousands upon thousands of dollars that disappeared into his lifestyle with nothing to show for it. As I compiled this evidence, I also began to make changes. First, I called my phone provider and removed my parents and sister from my family plan, a plan I had been paying entirely on my own for 3 years. Would you like to notify the other lines of this change? The customer service rep asked. No, I said firmly. They'll figure it out when their service stops tomorrow. Next, I canceled the automatic payments I had set up for my parents' internet and streaming services. I removed my card information from my sister's Amazon account, which she had been using freely for years. I logged into the online portals for various utilities where I had been making payments and removed my information. Electric bills, water bills, subscription services, all of it gone in a series of decisive clicks. For accounts where I couldn't remove myself online, I made phone calls. Patient, determined phone calls, explaining that I would no longer be responsible for these bills. But we've had you listed as the responsible party for over 2 years, one representative told me about my aunt's cable bill. Not anymore, I said. The process was exhausting but exhilarating. With each cancellation, each removal, I felt lighter. I was cutting the invisible threads that had bound me to a one-sided arrangement for years. The day before Christmas Eve, exactly a week after being banned from the family holiday, my phone exploded with notifications. Service interruptions, payment failures, account suspensions. The first call came from my mother, her voice tight with anger. Samantha, the internet is out and the cable company says you canceled the payment. What is going on? I'm not paying for it anymore, I said simply. But we can't afford to. You know your father's pension barely covers. You'll need to figure it out, I interrupted. Just like I've had to figure out how to support all of you for years. Is this about Christmas? Are you still upset about that silly argument with Jake? This isn't about Christmas, Mom. This is about years of being taken for granted, years of being used. No one is using you. We're family. Family doesn't ban someone from Christmas for setting a boundary. Family doesn't expect one person to carry everyone's financial burdens without acknowledgement or repayment. My mother's voice turned pleading. Samantha, please. It's Christmas. We need the internet for the kids to watch their shows. Your father needs his medication. Dad's medication is covered by Medicare, I replied, having already verified this. And the kids can watch DVDs or read books. You're being cruel. No, Mom. I'm finally being fair. To myself. After I hung up, more calls flooded in. My sister, furious that her Amazon account suddenly required payment. My aunt, confused about why her cable was shut off. My father, leaving a gruff voicemail about making your mother cry at Christmas. Jake called last, his voice a mixture of anger and panic. What the hell, Sam? The payment for my truck didn't go through. They're threatening to repossess it. That's not my problem anymore, Jake. This is about that stupid fight, isn't it? Fine. I'm sorry, okay? I shouldn't have put you on the spot like that. Now can you please fix this? His apology was so transparent, so obviously motivated by his immediate financial need rather than genuine remorse, that I almost laughed. No, Jake, I'm not fixing this. I'm not fixing anything anymore. The money train has stopped. But it's Christmas, he shouted. What about Lily? Do you want her to see her dad's truck get towed away on Christmas? Maybe you should have thought about Lily before spending money on a truck you can't afford, or a leather jacket, or whatever else you prioritized over your financial obligations. You bitch, he hissed. You're really showing your true colors now. So are you, I replied calmly. Goodbye, Jake. I blocked his number, then turned off my phone entirely. I made myself a cup of tea and sat by my window, watching snow begin to fall gently outside. For the first time in years, I felt at peace. I had no obligations beyond myself, no one's financial crisis to solve, no guilt trips to navigate. I was free. Christmas Eve arrived cold and quiet. Normally, I would have been at my parents' house, helping cook the traditional dinner, wrapping last-minute gifts that I'd purchased for everyone. Instead, I was alone in my apartment, savoring the silence. I had turned my phone back on but kept it on silent. The notifications had slowed from a flood to a trickle. No one had tried to come to my apartment. Yet. I suspected they were all too busy scrambling to figure out their financial situations to confront me directly. Around noon, I decided to take action rather than wait for the inevitable confrontation. I gathered the binder I had created, put on my warmest coat, and drove to my parents' house. When I arrived, the driveway was full of cars. My sister's minivan, my aunt and uncle's sedan, Jake's truck. Everyone was there for Christmas Eve dinner, just as planned. Everyone except me. I sat in my car for a few minutes, gathering my courage. Then I grabbed the binder and walked to the front door. I didn't knock. I still had a key, and this had been my home for most of my life. The house was warm and filled with the smells of holiday cooking. Christmas music played softly from the living room speakers. For a moment, nostalgia hit me hard, and I almost turned around and left. But then I heard Jake's laugh from the dining room, and my resolve hardened. I walked into the dining room where the entire family was gathered around the table. The conversation stopped abruptly when they saw me. Surprise, confusion, and in some cases, anger flashed across their faces. Samantha, my mother said, her voice strained. I didn't know you were coming. I wasn't invited, I replied. But I have something to say. My father stood up. If you've come to apologize to Jake, we're happy to welcome you back for Christmas. I looked at Jake, who was watching me with narrowed eyes, then back to my father. I'm not here to apologize. I'm here to set the record straight. I placed the binder on the table with a decisive thud. This is a record of every dollar I've given or paid on behalf of everyone in this room over the past 3 years. $34,267. Silence fell over the room. My sister Bethany shifted uncomfortably in her seat. My aunt looked down at her plate. Jake's face flushed red. "Nobody asked you to keep track," my father finally said, his voice tight. "Nobody asked me if I could afford to support an entire extended family either," I countered. "But here we are." I opened the binder to Jake's section and turned it so everyone could see. "Jake has received $12,146 from me in the last 3 years. Car payments, mortgage help, cash transfers. Money that was always just until next month, but somehow never got repaid." Jake stood up abruptly. "This is ridiculous. I'm not sitting here for this." "Sit down," my mother said sharply, surprising everyone. She was looking at the binder, her face pale. "Is this true, Jake?" Jake sputtered. "I mean, Sam helped out a few times, sure, but not like this. She's exaggerating." I flipped through the pages, pointing out specific entries. September 15th, $3,000 for business supplies. November 3rd, $500 for Lily's medical bills. January 10th, $800 for your mortgage payment. With each entry, I pulled out the corresponding evidence. Screenshots of our text conversations, bank transfers, Venmo receipts. "And after all that," I continued, "when I finally said no to one more request, you turned everyone against me, had me banned from Christmas." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "Samantha, we didn't know." "You didn't want to know," I corrected her gently. "It was easier to assume I could afford it, that I should afford it because I don't have kids or a mortgage, because I'm just Sam, the reliable one, the quiet one." I turned to the other sections of the binder, laying out the evidence for each family member. The room remained silent as I methodically went through every loan, every bill payment, every financial rescue. When I finished, I closed the binder and looked around at my family's shocked faces. I'm not asking for the money back. I know I'll never see it. But I am done being the family bank. I've canceled all the automatic payments. I've removed myself from all the accounts. From now on, your bills are your responsibility. "But Sam," my sister Bethany began, "you know I'm a single mom. I can't—" "You can," I interrupted. "You'll have to. Just like I've had to figure out how to support not just myself, but all of you, for years." Jake stood up again, his face dark with anger. "So this is your revenge? Cutting us all off at Christmas?" "No, Jake. This is me finally respecting myself enough to say no. This is me finally understanding that being available doesn't mean being exploited." The silence that followed was deafening. No one seemed to know what to say. A family that had never been at a loss for words when asking for money was suddenly speechless when confronted with the truth. Finally, my father cleared his throat. "Samantha, I think you should leave. You've made your point, but this is Christmas Eve. We can discuss this after the holidays." I looked at him steadily. "That's exactly what I expected you to say, Dad. Push it off. Avoid the uncomfortable truth. Go back to pretending everything is fine." "What do you want from us?" my aunt asked, speaking for the first time. "An apology? Fine. I'm sorry if you felt taken advantage of." "I don't want an apology," I said. "I want recognition. I want acknowledgement of what's been happening. And I want it to stop." My mother, who had been quiet since looking at the binder, suddenly stood up. "Everyone out," she said. We all stared at her. "Mom?" my sister questioned. "Everyone except Samantha. Out of the dining room. Now." My mother's voice was firm in a way I'd rarely heard before. Reluctantly, everyone filed out, leaving just my mother and me in the dining room. She sat down heavily and gestured for me to sit across from her. "I had no idea," she said simply. "I mean, I knew you helped sometimes, but this—" She gestured at the binder. "Why didn't you say something sooner? Would you have listened?" I asked quietly. She was silent for a long moment. "Probably not," she admitted. "We've gotten so used to you being the strong one, the capable one. It was easier to lean on you than to face our own failures." Hearing my mother admit this brought unexpected tears to my eyes. "I just wanted to be part of the family, Mom, not the family ATM." "Oh, Samantha." My mother reached across the table and took my hand. You've always been more than that. We've just been too selfish to show you. Then why ban me from Christmas? Why take Jake's side? She sighed deeply. Because it was easier. Because Jake was here, making a scene, and you were being quiet as usual. Because we're used to you giving in, fixing things. She shook her head. It was wrong. I see that now. We sat in silence for a few minutes, still holding hands across the table. Finally, my mother spoke again. What happens now? Now everyone figures out how to manage their own finances, I said firmly. I'm not turning the payments back on. I'm not bailing anyone out anymore. It's going to be hard for some of them. For all of us, really. I know. But it's necessary. My mother nodded slowly. I suppose it is. She looked toward the living room where the rest of the family was waiting. Should I get them? No, I said, standing up. I've said what I needed to say. I'm going to go. But it's Christmas Eve. Stay. I shook my head. I can't. Not this year. I need some distance to heal. My mother's eyes filled with tears again, but she nodded in understanding. Will you come back? Eventually, I said. When things are different. When I'm treated like family, not a financial resource. She walked me to the door, away from the curious eyes of the rest of the family. At the threshold, she hugged me tightly. I'm so sorry, Samantha. For everything. I know, Mom. Merry Christmas. As I drove home through the snowy streets, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. Sadness at being separated from my family during the holidays, relief at finally speaking my truth, and a strange, unfamiliar lightness that I gradually recognized as freedom. For the first time in years, I was responsible only for myself. My finances were my own. My choices were my own. I spent Christmas Day alone, but not lonely. I made myself a special breakfast, opened a few small gifts I had bought for myself, and watched classic holiday movies. I turned my phone off and enjoyed the quiet. The day after Christmas, I decided to check my messages. There were dozens, texts, voicemails, emails. Some angry, some pleading, some surprisingly reflective. My father had left a gruff voicemail. Your mother says I need to call and, well, I'm sorry, Samantha. I didn't see what was happening. Call me back when you can. My sister Bethany had sent a long text apologizing for taking advantage of me and asking if we could talk about setting up a payment plan for what she owed me. My aunt and uncle had sent an email with a genuine apology and a promise to do better. Jake, predictably, had sent an angry text accusing me of ruining Christmas and threatening to never forget this betrayal. I responded to each message according to its tone, acknowledging the genuine apologies, agreeing to talk with my sister about a reasonable repayment plan, ignoring Jake's threats. In the days that followed, I began to rebuild my relationship with my family on new terms. It wasn't easy. There were difficult conversations, moments of backsliding, attempts to reestablish old patterns. My father struggled the most with the new dynamic. He had been raised to believe that family took care of family, no questions asked. The idea that this had become one-sided exploitation was hard for him to accept. In my day, we didn't keep score, he said during one tense conversation. This isn't about keeping score, Dad, I explained patiently. It's about balance, about everyone contributing what they can, not one person carrying everyone else. Slowly, he began to understand. Or at least, he began to try. My sister Bethany surprised me the most. Once she got over her initial shock and defensiveness, she became my strongest ally in the family. She set up a small monthly repayment plan, just $50, but it was something. And more importantly, she stopped asking for more. I've been budgeting, she told me proudly during a coffee date in January. It's hard, but I'm figuring it out. I should have done this years ago instead of relying on you. My mother became the mediator, helping others in the family adjust to the new reality. She started a family financial planning group where they shared budgeting tips and helped each other without automatically turning to me. And Jake? Jake stopped speaking to me entirely. His wife Ashley reached out once to ask if I would reconsider helping with their mortgage, just until Jake's business picks up, but I held firm. I'm sorry, Ashley. I told her. I care about you and Lily, but Jake needs to solve his own financial problems. She didn't understand, but I didn't expect her to. Not yet, anyway. By February, 2 months after the Christmas confrontation, my life had changed dramatically. Without the constant drain of supporting my family financially, I had a surplus in my bank account for the first time in years. I started seeing a therapist to work through the complex emotions of setting boundaries with family. Dr. Chen helped me understand that my self-worth had become dangerously entangled with being needed. You believed that being useful, being the provider, was the only way to secure love and belonging, she pointed out during one session. Wasn't it? I asked. They only called when they needed something. And now? Now that you've stopped providing financially? I thought about it. My mother called regularly just to check in. My sister invited me for coffee or walks in the park. My father had awkwardly asked if I wanted to go fishing in the spring, something we hadn't done since I was a teenager. They're still here, I realized. Not all of them, but most. They're trying. Dr. Chen smiled. That suggests your value to them goes beyond your wallet, doesn't it? It was a powerful realization. Not a complete healing, that would take much longer, but a start. With my newfound financial freedom, I began to make changes in my own life. I started researching master's programs in financial counseling, something I'd always been interested in but couldn't afford while supporting everyone else. I took a weekend trip to Chicago, my first real vacation in years. I bought new furniture for my apartment. Small luxuries that most people took for granted, but that had been impossible for me before. I also started a small emergency fund specifically for family needs, but with strict conditions. It would be a formal lending process, with documented terms and repayment plans. No more casual transfers that were never mentioned again. In March, my mother called with news that sent a chill through me. "Jake's losing his house," she said without preamble. "The bank is foreclosing." My first instinct was guilt, followed immediately by a surge of anxiety. This was exactly what Jake had predicted, that without my support, his family would suffer. "That's terrible," I said carefully. "What are they going to do?" "Ashley's parents are letting them move in temporarily. Jake's furious, of course. She hesitated. "He's blaming me," I finished for her. "Yes," she admitted. "He says if you hadn't abandoned them, they would have been able to keep up with the payments." I closed my eyes, fighting the wave of guilt threatening to drown me. Dr. Chen's voice echoed in my mind. "You are not responsible for the consequences of other people's financial decisions." "Mom, Jake has been living beyond his means for years. This was going to happen eventually, with or without my help." "I know that," my mother said, surprising me. "We all do. Jake's the only one who won't admit it." "Is Lily okay?" I asked, thinking of my young niece. "She's fine. She's excited about living with her other grandparents for a while. Kids are resilient." After we hung up, I sat with my emotions for a long time. The old Samantha would have immediately called Jake, offered money, tried to fix the situation. The new Samantha recognized that doing so would only prolong the inevitable and drag me back into the destructive pattern we'd established. Instead, I sent Ashley a text. "I heard about the house. I'm sorry you're going through this. If Lily needs anything, really needs, not just wants, please let me know." Ashley's response came hours later. "Thanks. Jake doesn't want your help, but I appreciate the offer for Lily." It was a small opening, a tiny acknowledgement that perhaps Jake's pride was part of the problem. I took it as a positive sign. The foreclosure seemed to be a wake-up call for the rest of the family. My aunt called to tell me that she and my uncle had started meeting with a financial advisor. "We should have done this years ago," she admitted. "We just got used to spending without thinking because we knew you'd catch us if we fell." My sister Bethany increased her monthly repayment from $50 to $75. "It's not much," she said, "but my boss said I might get a promotion soon. If I do, I'll increase it again." My parents, who had struggled the most with budgeting, surprised me by selling their large house and downsizing to a small condo. "We don't need all that space," my father explained gruffly. And the mortgage was killing us. This is more practical. I helped them move, packing boxes and cleaning the old house one last time. As we worked side by side, my father suddenly stopped and looked at me. You know, Samantha, I've been thinking a lot about what happened at Christmas. I paused, box in hand. Oh? I was wrong. We all were. We took advantage of your good nature for years, and when you finally stood up for yourself, we punished you for it. He shook his head. That's not what a father should do. That's not what family should do. I set down the box, throat tight with emotion. Dad? Let me finish. I'm proud of you, Samantha. Proud that you had the courage to do what was right, even when we made it so damn hard. He cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable with the emotional conversation, but pushing through anyway. I'm sorry, truly sorry. I hugged him then. This proud, stubborn man who had rarely apologized for anything in his life. Thank you, Dad. That means a lot. As spring turned to summer, my family continued to adjust to the new normal. Our relationships were different now, more balanced, more honest. There were still moments of tension, still occasional attempts to fall back into old patterns. But we were all trying. All except Jake. He remained the holdout, refusing to speak to me, blaming me for his financial collapse rather than acknowledging his own role in it. Give him time, my mother advised. He's lost everything, his house, his pride. It's easier to blame you than to face his own mistakes. I'm not holding my breath, I replied. But secretly, I hoped that eventually, Jake too would come around. Summer passed in a blur of positive changes. I was accepted into a master's program in financial counseling to start in the fall. I would continue working part-time at my accounting firm, but my focus would shift to my education, an investment in myself that had been impossible before. My apartment, once a Spartan space that reflected my financial constraints, slowly transformed into a true home. Nothing extravagant, but small touches that made it mine. Art on the walls, plants on the windowsills, a comfortable reading chair where I spent evenings with books I'd always wanted to read but never had time for. My family dynamics continued to evolve. My sister Bethany got the promotion she'd been hoping for and immediately increased her monthly repayment. I want to clear my debt to you, she told me over lunch one day. It might take years, but I'll do it. I appreciate that, I said. But you know I'm not expecting to get all that money back. She shook her head firmly. No, I need to do this. Not just for you, but for me, for my kids. I need to show them that responsibilities matter, that debts should be paid. My parents had settled into their condo and surprisingly seemed happier there than in the big house they'd struggled to maintain. My mother had even started a small container garden on their balcony. Less space to clean, less money on utilities, my mother said cheerfully during one of our weekly calls. We should have done this years ago. Only Jake remained estranged. I heard about him only through family updates. He and Ashley were still living with her parents. He was working more consistently, but struggling to rebuild their finances. Lily was starting kindergarten in the fall. I sent Lily a card and gift for her birthday in July, but received no acknowledgement. I told myself it didn't matter, that I was doing it for her, not for Jake's approval. But the silence still hurt. In August, I received an unexpected text from Ashley. Jake's at work. Can we talk? Coffee at Miller's downtown at 3? I agreed, curious and slightly apprehensive. We had never been close, Ashley and I. She had always been firmly in Jake's corner, accepting his version of events without question. When I arrived at the coffee shop, Ashley was already there, looking tired but determined. We ordered and made small talk until our drinks arrived. Then she took a deep breath. I want to apologize, she said, surprising me. For my part in what happened. For taking advantage of your generosity for so long. I wasn't sure how to respond. Thank you, I said finally. That means a lot. Jake doesn't know I'm here, she continued. He's still, well, you know how he is. Proud, stubborn, unwilling to admit when he's wrong. I nodded, thinking of all the times Jake had borrowed money with grand promises of repayment that never materialized. But I've been thinking a lot about everything since we lost the house, Ashley said. About how we lived, how we spent. It wasn't sustainable, was it? Even with your help. No, I agreed gently. It wasn't. She looked down at her coffee. The funny thing is, living with my parents has been good for us in some ways. Lily loves being around her grandparents. We're saving money for the first time ever. Jake's working regularly. She looked up at me. We're learning to live within our means. Finally. That's great, Ashley. Really. It is, but… She hesitated. Jake still blames you. He says if you hadn't cut us off right before Christmas, we would have had time to adjust, to figure things out. I felt a flash of the old guilt, but pushed it away. We both know that's not true. Jake had years to figure things out, thousands of dollars of chances. Ashley nodded slowly. I know. I think he knows it too, deep down. But admitting it means admitting he failed Lily, failed me. That's hard for him. I understand that, I said. And I did. For years I had enabled Jake rather than force him to face his failures. In some ways I had been complicit in creating the man he had become. I don't expect him to apologize anytime soon, Ashley continued. But I wanted you to know that I see what happened. I understand why you did what you did. And I think it was necessary. We talked for another hour. Ashley sharing stories about Lily's first day of kindergarten, their plans to eventually get their own place again, her new part-time job. It was the longest, most honest conversation we'd ever had. As we were preparing to leave, Ashley hesitated, then reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. It's not much, she said, handing it to me. Just $200, but it's a start. I've been saving a little from each paycheck. I stared at the envelope, stunned. Ashley, you don't have to. I want to, she interrupted firmly. We owe you so much more. But this is what I can do right now. Please take it. Reluctantly, I accepted the envelope. Thank you. No, she said, meeting my eyes directly. Thank you for forcing us to change. It was painful, but it was necessary. As I walked to my car after our meeting, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. Ashley's acknowledgement, her understanding, meant more to me than the money ever could. It was validation that I hadn't been wrong to set boundaries, that the pain had been worth it. When I got home, I added Ashley's $200 to the small repayment fund I had started. Between that and Bethany's contributions, it had grown to just over $1,000, a tiny fraction of what I was owed, but symbolic nonetheless. More important than the money was what it represented: recognition, responsibility, respect. The very things I had been seeking when I confronted my family at Christmas. As summer wound down and I prepared to start my master's program, I felt a growing sense of peace. My life was finally my own, my money, my time, my choices. I was investing in myself first, building the foundation for a future that wasn't constrained by others' financial needs. My phone rang one evening in late August. It was my mother. Samantha, she said, her voice tentative. I'm calling about Thanksgiving. I tensed slightly. Holiday gatherings were still a sensitive topic. I had attended Easter dinner at my parents' condo, and while it had been civil, there had been an undercurrent of tension, especially with Jake present. What about Thanksgiving? I asked cautiously. Your father and I would like to host it here at the condo. It will be smaller than usual. The space isn't as big as the old house. But we want you there. It's important to us. Will Jake be there? My mother sighed. Yes. Ashley and Lily, too. I don't know, Mom. Things are still pretty raw between us. I know. But we're family, Samantha. Not the way we were before. Not with you carrying everyone's burdens, but family nonetheless. We need to find a way forward. I thought about it, weighing the potential discomfort against the importance of rebuilding these relationships on healthier terms. All right, I said finally. I'll come. Thank you, sweetheart. I could hear the relief in my mother's voice. It means the world to your father and me. After we hung up, I sat on my balcony watching the sunset, thinking about how much had changed in the past year. From financial exploitation to boundary setting, from confrontation to gradual healing. It hadn't been easy, and the journey wasn't over yet. Jake was still a hurdle to overcome, and old patterns still threatened to reassert themselves at times. But I was stronger now, clearer about who I was and what I deserved. I had learned that true family support was reciprocal, that love didn't mean martyrdom, that being reliable didn't mean being a doormat. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, I made a promise to myself. I would continue to grow, to prioritize my own well-being, to build relationships based on mutual respect rather than financial dependence. The path forward might not be smooth, especially with Thanksgiving looming on the horizon, but I was ready to walk it, on my own terms, at my own pace, with my boundaries firmly in place. Thanksgiving arrived with a dusting of early snow and a knot of anxiety in my stomach. I had spent the previous evening baking pumpkin pies, my traditional contribution to family gatherings, and trying to prepare myself mentally for seeing Jake for the first time since our Christmas confrontation. Ashley had texted me a few times since our coffee meeting, sending photos of Lily and updates about their situation. They were planning to move into their own apartment after the new year, smaller, more affordable, within their actual budget. But Jake still hadn't reached out directly. I drove to my parents' condo with mixed emotions, hope for continued healing with most of my family, apprehension about Jake, and a new feeling that had been growing stronger, pride in myself for maintaining boundaries despite the difficulty. My mother greeted me with a warm hug. "You look wonderful, Samantha." Happy. I am, I realized. Despite the anxiety about this gathering, I was genuinely happier than I had been in years. My father hugged me next, gruffly affectionate as always. "The place looks different with your mother's decorating," he commented, gesturing around the cozy condo. It did look nice, warm and inviting, with Thanksgiving decorations that were tasteful rather than extravagant, another sign of their more measured approach to finances. My sister Bethany arrived with her kids, followed by my aunt and uncle. The condo filled with familiar voices and laughter. It was smaller than our gatherings at the old house, more intimate. I found I preferred it this way. When Jake, Ashley, and Lily arrived, the energy in the room shifted perceptibly. Ashley smiled at me nervously. Lily ran to give me a hug, unaware of the tension between the adults. Jake nodded stiffly in my direction but didn't approach. Dinner was a careful dance of polite conversation and strategic seating arrangements. My mother had placed Jake and me at opposite ends of the table. We talked about safe topics, the unusually cold weather, my new master's program, Lily's kindergarten adventures. After dinner, as everyone helped clear dishes, I found myself alone in the kitchen with Jake for the first time. He was rinsing plates while I loaded the dishwasher. The silence between us was heavy with unspoken words. Finally, Jake cleared his throat. "Ashley told me she saw you, that she gave you money." I continued loading dishes, giving him space to continue. "I was angry at first," he admitted. "Felt like she was taking your side." I stayed quiet, sensing he had more to say. "We're getting an apartment in January," he continued. "Nothing fancy. 2 bedrooms, basic amenities, within our budget." He emphasized the last part, glancing at me quickly before looking away again. "That's good," I said neutrally. "Lily will be happy to have her own space again." Jake nodded, scrubbing a pot with more force than necessary. I sold the truck. Got something older, cheaper, more practical. This surprised me. Jake had loved that truck, had insisted on buying it even when I had pointed out he couldn't afford the payments. "Living with Ashley's parents?" he continued, then stopped, reorganizing his thoughts. "It's been humbling. Necessary, but humbling." I finished loading the dishwasher and turned to face him directly. "Jake, why are you telling me this?" He set down the pot he'd been scrubbing and dried his hands slowly on a dish towel, buying time. "Because you were right," he said finally, the words seeming to cost him considerable effort. "About all of it. The way I lived, the money I borrowed and never repaid, the expectations I put on you." He met my eyes briefly. "You were right to cut me off. To cut us all off." I hadn't expected this. Not from Jake, the proudest and most stubborn of my relatives. It doesn't make it any easier, he continued. Losing the house, starting over. But it was going to happen eventually, with or without your help. I was just delaying the inevitable, using your money to maintain a lifestyle I couldn't afford. Thank you for saying that, I said quietly. It means a lot. Jake nodded, looking uncomfortable but determined. I'm not good at apologies. Never have been. But I am sorry, Sam, for taking advantage of you for so long, for turning everyone against you at Christmas when you finally said no. I appreciate that. I can't pay you back right away, he added. Not like Bethany's doing. Not yet. But Ashley and I have been talking. Once we're settled in the new place, once we've built up a small emergency fund of our own, we want to start, even if it's just a little at a time. I'd like that, I said. Not for the money itself, but for what it represents. Jake nodded in understanding. A new beginning. A better way of relating to each other. Exactly. We stood in silence for a moment, the air between us lighter than it had been in nearly a year. Lily misses you, Jake said finally. She asks about you all the time. I miss her too. Maybe you could come over sometimes, once we're in the new place. She'd love that. I'd love it too, I said, smiling genuinely for the first time in Jake's presence. We returned to the living room where the rest of the family was gathered, watching football and enjoying dessert. The tension that had followed us throughout the day seemed to have dissipated, replaced by a cautious optimism. Later, as I was preparing to leave, my mother pulled me aside. Jake talked to you, she said. It wasn't a question. Yes, it was unexpected. She smiled knowingly. Not to me. He's been working up to it for months. Ashley's been encouraging him, and he's been seeing the changes in the rest of us. How we're all doing better since we started handling our own finances. Even you and Dad? I asked. Especially us, my mother confirmed. This condo is the best decision we ever made. We're actually saving money now, can you believe it? She squeezed my hand. All because you forced us to face reality. As I drove home that evening, I reflected on the remarkable journey of the past year. From being taken for granted and financially exploited to setting firm boundaries and helping my family change for the better, it had been painful, yes, but ultimately transformative. I pulled into my apartment complex and parked, noticing how the Christmas lights had already been strung along the buildings. Last Christmas had been the lowest point, banned from the family gathering, alone in my apartment, cutting financial ties that had bound me for years. This Christmas would be different. There would be no financial gifts. We had all agreed on that. No one expecting me to fund the celebration or cover their shortfalls. Just family, together, on more equal footing than we had been in years. As I unlocked my door and stepped into my apartment, my sanctuary, my truly personal space, I felt a profound sense of peace. The journey wasn't over. Old habits would try to reassert themselves. There would be slip-ups and difficult conversations ahead. But the fundamental dynamic had shifted. I was no longer the family bank. I was simply Samantha. Daughter, sister, aunt, cousin. Loved for who I was, not for what I could provide financially. And that, I realized, was the greatest gift I could have given myself. In the months and years that followed, my family continued to evolve. My sister Bethany eventually repaid her entire debt. It took 4 years of consistent payments, but she did it, teaching her children a powerful lesson about financial responsibility in the process. My parents embraced their new, more modest lifestyle with unexpected enthusiasm, even starting a small gardening business that provided them with extra income and purpose in retirement. Jake and Ashley worked their way back to financial stability slowly but surely. Their new apartment was nothing like their foreclosed house, smaller, simpler, within their means. But they seemed happier there, less burdened by appearances and expectations. And me? I completed my master's in financial counseling and started a small practice helping families understand and improve their financial situations. My own experience became a powerful tool for helping others recognize unhealthy financial dynamics, and set appropriate boundaries. The irony wasn't lost on me. After years of being exploited financially, I had turned that painful experience into a career helping others avoid the same pitfalls. The quiet, reliable Samantha, who had once been a doormat, was now an advocate, a guide, a voice of empowerment. Looking back, I realized that being banned from Christmas was the best thing that could have happened to me. It had forced me to see my family clearly, to value myself enough to say no, to understand that true love never comes with a price tag attached. I had lost my place at the Christmas table that year, but I had gained something far more valuable: my financial freedom, my self-respect, and ultimately a healthier relationship with the people I loved most.